Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. It's just about time for Shabbat here. Well, we got a few hours to go before candle lighting, but I wanted to go ahead and explain a little bit about tonight's Torah story. Tonight's Torah story is called Chukat, and this is about judgments. And I want to talk about what the message actually is so that we can extract that message and apply it to our lives right here, right now. This story is all about the red heifer. If you've never heard about it before, you should look it up. Chukat, C-H-U-K-A-T. You can read the story yourself and you can do your own interpretations. But in short, this red heifer, this red cow, was supposed to, the ashes of it were supposed to bring purification and healing for those beings who needed it. And of course, this is a metaphor. And it's saying that there's always healing available if we just believe. If we tap into that frequency that the red heifer or the red cow represents, then we can access healing anytime. And so, really, this Torah story is telling us that right now, at this time where the world needs it the most, we have the opportunity to tap into that healing, but we have to believe. You have to believe in order to receive. And so Miriam dies in this story as well. It's Moses' sister. She dies in this story, and the well dries up after her death. And there's no water in the desert, and the people are complaining they need water. So Moses goes to Hashem, God, and he, asks, what do I do? And God says, you're going to go to this rock, and you're going to speak to it, and water will come out of it. Okay? And let me just tell you right before this, God is saying that Moses is at a certain level of consciousness, and he will get to stay there, but that the people of Israel will not. This is just in short, I'm summarizing here, okay? And Moses says, no, I'm nothing without the people of Israel, and I don't want to remain at this level of consciousness alone, because it's not about that. It's not about how high can I rise alone. It's about how high can we rise together. And so God says, well, I'll give you this chance to go to this rock, and you're going to speak to it, and water is going to come out. But you're going to tell the people of Israel, hey, y'all, I'm going to talk to this rock, and water is going to come out. And if they believe, then I'll know that they're ready to rise to the level of consciousness at which you are residing. And I'll let them reside there with you. And so Moses is like, all right, I guess I'll go try this. But he's carrying doubt. So he goes to the rock, and and with Aaron, his brother, and he says to the people of Israel, the Israelites, I'm going to speak to this rock, and water will come out. But he doesn't speak to it. He hits the rock. He strikes it because he's carrying doubt, and that's a reflection and expression of his doubt. He hits it instead of speaking to it because he thinks that this physical act will provide an opportunity for more belief, for the people to really believe that this water is going to come out of the rock. That's an attempt out of desperation to get the people to that space of believing so that he doesn't have to leave them behind on the journey. And so the water does come out. Hashem, God, allows the water to come out and allows the people, their thirst to be quenched. Now, if you're into the occult arts, you know that water represents consciousness. For example, in the Aquarian archetype, the Aquarius is the water bearer. And a lot of people think it's a water sign, but it's actually an air sign. And the water is representing consciousness being poured from the heavens to the earth. That's just a little bit about Aquarius. And so the same as in this story, the water that comes out of the rock is representing consciousness. So the people's thirst is quenched, as God always promises it will be. However, it wasn't done the way that he asked. So Moses and Aaron are punished, and they can't enter the land of Israel. So no one's going to be entering the land of Israel, but their thirst was quenched, okay? There are lots of lessons here, but the ones that I want to point out that I've been focusing on in my Torah studies the last couple of days are these points. Number one, this experience is nothing without each other. We're in this together. Number two, you have to be willing to fall to help another. This is the story about falling from the Garden of Eden. We're all fallen angels. You've heard this story before. We come here to this place to learn, to grow. Many of us volunteers who come back to help. Many of us just still needing those lessons. And so because there's only one here, we're all one, we can see this as a one energetic distribution, right? It's like, I'm coming here to do this for us, for the one. And each person is a microcosm of that one. And so in order to do what is truly right, truly righteous, we've got to start looking at each other in that way, as, hey, you are another me. And I'm willing to fall with you. I'm willing to fall for you. Because if in the end we're going to rise more because of your elevation, I'm willing to do that. And so I listened to a rabbi talk last night about how this is what it really means to be a tzaddik, which means a righteous one, as Moses was, as Jesus was, as Buddha, right? So this is what it truly means to be a tzaddik. It's one thing to do a good deed. It's one thing to strive to be a good person. That's great. But a truly, truly righteous, truly good person is one who's willing to sacrifice, is one who's willing to be in pain for another, one who's willing to feel the suffering of someone else. This is how real miracles happen, and this is how real magic happens, and this is how one truly becomes a tzaddik. Because what do you have to lose? It's easy to be nice to someone when it's easy, when there's nothing to sacrifice. Of course it's easy to be kind then. You don't have to give anything up. But when you're willing to sacrifice in the name of service, that is what makes a true tzaddik. And expanding on that concept, a part of this Torah story, Chukat, for Shabbat tonight, is there's a part where one of the high priests is using the ashes of the red heifer, the calf. Remember, it's a symbol of purification. He's using the ashes to help purify someone who needed it. But what ends up happening in the story is the high priest takes on those impurities and negative qualities. Why does he take it on? Because he didn't fully experience the empathy and the sympathy and the pain of the person. So that's not a full and whole healing. He wasn't actually feeling the issue and the problem. So he didn't have that empathy needed to perform the true, deepest miracle of healing. That potential that was absolutely present there. And it always is. The potential to fully heal is always there. And I really like this part of the story, and I'll tell you why. Because A, it shows us that empathy is key in being a healer. Whether you're a high priest or you're a Reiki practitioner, doesn't matter who you are. We all are healers. We all have that archetype within. And the other reason I really love this particular story, this particular part of the story, is because it kind of reveals to us, if you look closely, if you look a little bit deeper, it shows us the power that lies within self-healing. Because no one can have greater compassion for you than yourself. No one knows what you're going through greater than yourself. No one can feel to that degree what you're going through greater than you. So yes, there are true healers in this world. Not as many as claim to be. But they're out there. But those are people who are truly empathic. And they feel for you and they love you and they really feel and know that you're another them. And so, yes, of course, the greater opportunity for compassion, the greater opportunity for healing. That's the secret, okay? For example, when a mother is giving birth, she often feels safest when she's surrounded by other women who've given birth. And why is that? Because of the level of empathy they feel, because they've been there. And because of that, they have the greatest opportunity to embody that compassion. And that compassion is the magical force that heals everything. And so this is the secret to Chukat, the greater compassion you can feel. The more you can feel the pain, then the greater the healing. If you don't fully feel the pain, then you're not to the deepest level aware of it. We have to be aware there's a problem to even heal it. If the impurity doesn't come up and out, we can't see it in order to heal it, to get rid of it. And so it's not just about acknowledging the pain, but how deeply can we go into it? How deeply can we feel it? Because feeling is that electricity. Feeling is everything. So how deeply can you feel it? Because that's what's going to create the empathy, which is going to create the compassion, which is going to initiate the healing. And I don't know about you guys, but this is it for me right here. This point of, wow, this is the key to self-healing, is understanding this information right here that's hidden within the story of Chukat. We have the greatest ability to feel into our own pain. The only thing that's in the way is our own doubt and our own denial. So when we can stop doubting in the power of healing, we got to know that we have the power to do it first. Okay? And then when we can stop denying our shadows and our darkness and our pain and our suffering, okay, then you have the formula for true healing. It's like, A, I know I can heal. Great. I know the potential that's there. Perfect. And everybody has this potential. It's within all things. So we get that out of the way. And then we say, all right, what is there to heal now that I know I can? And then from there we go, all right, let me really sink into each of these things that need healing, so that as I give it my awareness, energy will flow there, right? Energy goes where attention flows, or vice versa, whatever that is, right? So the more we acknowledge, then the more the energy is going to go there. And the more we feel into that acknowledgement, the more we actually feel it in our hearts and in our bodies, then the more powerful the energy will vibrate as it flows there. And then we really create a field to perform that healing. This is all in Chukat, you guys. Okay? The other thing is really being aware of this self-doubt, okay? Remember how Moses went to the rock and he doubted that the people would believe. So he did, because of his doubt, he did get in the way, and he did give up an opportunity for bigger healing, right? So for example, if he didn't have that doubt in the people, and he said, I'm going to give them the shot, and I'm going to truly listen to Hashem, and I'm just going to expect that they're going to be with me and believe that this miracle is going to happen, okay? So instead of striking the rock, let's say he went to the rock and he said, people of Israel, I'm going to speak to this rock and the water is going to come out. And if he really in his heart trusted and he had no doubt in Hashem and in Hashem's plan, then perhaps the miracle would have happened, and by somehow, by the power of Hashem, the people would have believed that the water would come out of the rock, and then it would have, and then they'd all be raised to that higher level of consciousness together as one. But he didn't. He didn't believe, and he didn't believe for them. He actually doubted for them. Even though he knew Hashem would do it, he doubted for them, and then we're all in this together. So because he did that, he took away from them the opportunity to potentially rise to that level of consciousness. And that's okay, and that's perfect, and the story is written as it was because it's a metaphor. It's for a reason. Just like Eve had to eat that apple, right? Of course, she had to. Yeah, there's a reason. It's part of the story. It's telling us something very, very profound here. The entire Torah is a metaphorical story that's explaining the evolution of not only the mind, but also the spirit. And so it's a cycle, it has its seasons, and it keeps being told over and over again, and we sink into those levels of evolution that are being expressed deeper and deeper. Okay, so Moses doubting the collective there is telling us something about ourselves, and how when we doubt, it affects the whole. It doesn't only affect us, but it affects us. This is relative information. It is so useful to remember this truth right here, right now. Even though we're not in the time of Moses, even though we're not in those biblical times, these truths that are being expressed in the Torah are timeless. They're timelessly applicable truths, universal truths. So no matter where you are at in time and space, this message will always be true because we're one from the beginning to the never end. So when we doubt, we doubt. Okay, and when we believe, we believe. You've got to believe for the whole. You've got to carry that belief. And because Moses was this powerful figure, he's sort of representing that higher aspect within all of us, right? And that higher aspect is the part that really speaks for the whole. So if we don't have that part of ourselves in full trust and faith, if we don't have our higher self locked in, for example, right, then our guidance is a little, there will be doubts that creep in, there will be anxiety, maybe fears. If we don't have that solid higher perspective, then the rest kind of crumbles, okay? The rest of us is relying on that higher perspective for guidance. And this is how we all work as one consciousness on a greater, grander scale. So, with that said, in Chukat tonight we learned this really powerful story, to not doubt, to be in faith together, especially when we don't understand. Like when we're receiving a message from God, right? When we're receiving, see a little Freudian slip. I was going to say when we're receiving a message from above, when we're receiving a divine message. And then I said deceiving instead of receiving. And I think that's really cool that that came out, because it's just further proving my point that we deceive ourselves when we receive a message and then we don't believe it. We deceive when we don't believe. Ooh, this is a good one, you guys. Write that down. Write that down. We deceive ourselves when we don't believe. We have to believe to receive, but if we deceive, we never believe and we never receive. So we don't want to deceive ourselves, y'all. We want to really be able to open up to Hashem's miracles, the miracles that are present each moment. And the only thing in the way of receiving that is our own doubt. So sometimes when we get these messages, these divine messages, or these even subtle intuitive nudges, so it doesn't have to be some divine, huge, miraculous message, but okay, it's usually in the subtle whispers of the intuition, right? And it will tell you, move that pencil, or move that glass, or pick up this book. And in the moment, you're like, why? There's like, it makes no sense. And then your ego mind gets in the way, and you try to make sense of it, but these intuitive things can't be made sense of from this level of perspective. It's coming from a big picture perspective, and that's why we have to learn to develop that trust and faith. So we go back to the doubt in this small place, and we say, this doesn't make sense. So I reject it because it doesn't make sense, so I reject it. This is how we doubt, and this is how we block ourselves from receiving those intuitive messages that are actually going to help not only you, but us as one consciousness. So for example, if you get an intuitive nudge to move a glass, right? And you move it. Everything seems to go fine. And you wonder, had I not moved it, would everything have gone fine? You'll never know. But you trusted your intuition, and did it hurt? No. Now, for example, if your intuition tells you to move that glass, but you ignore it, what's going to happen is that glass is going to break, or what's in it is going to spill, or something is going to try to tell you. And if you're willing to see, you'll see it, but it may just pass you by if you're not staying present. Something's going to try to tell you after that, you should have listened. Okay? So it may even start a string of bad events. The universe may make it louder if it's something you really need to see. And it will say, start paying attention to your intuition. Because you didn't listen, that spilled. And because that spilled, this happened. And if you have the eye to see and you're staying present, you'll laugh at yourself and you'll go, oh shit, yeah, I should have moved that glass. So that's the funny, ironic thing about intuition and these little intuitive nudges, is that you don't always know. They don't always make sense. But the point is, you got to start to listen to those things, especially when they don't make sense. You got to trust. And the more you do trust, the more you'll develop that intuition, and it will work for you in greater and more profound ways. But you got to start small. You got to start with the intuitive whispers and nudges, and you have to actually follow them. Once you go through that process on a smaller scale, again, you will be able to practice this on a larger scale, and you will perform huge miracles that people will witness and be inspired by, and then ask you how you did it so they can do it as well. So it's about really not questioning intuition, trusting in those eccentric nudges, knowing that you're definitely not meant to understand all of these divine messages. In fact, if you're intellectualizing too much, and if you're using your analytical mind too much, and all of the intuitive nudges make sense from that intellectual perspective, you're probably missing out on a lot of deeper intuitive messages that are waiting to be heard by you, that you can't even perceive because you can't get out of your own head and your logical mind. Now, if you can get out of your logical mind and be more balanced with your logic and intuition, it opens up a whole new world of being able to decode divine messages and symbolism that exists within you and all around you. Okay, so it's really about trusting in that bigger picture and doing what you need to do. Remember Moses on the rock. If only he just listened to Hashem and didn't strike the rock, and he only talked to it, more miracles could have come from that. He took the chance away from the collective to be able to rise higher. So remember this, even when you don't understand, but if your intuition is telling you this is what's right, but you're like, even though it's right and it's what's moral and just, I can't make sense of it. And in fact, even if I can make sense of it, and I know these people can't, okay? For example, if you're at a certain level of consciousness to be able to understand the message coming in, then it's not up to you to judge and say, oh, but they won't get it. Oh, but they won't understand. Well, who are you to say? You have no idea. You have no idea what opportunity lies there for another to reach that same level of awareness. You can't, don't only not doubt yourself, don't doubt your brothers and don't doubt your sisters, and give them the chance to cultivate that trust and that intuition within themselves as well. Because when you doubt them, you doubt you. And that's the funny, tricky thing here is like it's one thing to work on self-doubt, but it's another thing when we get to that level of self-confidence to work through doubting others. That's like the next level. It's like we're all one, right? So we almost trick ourselves to be like, okay, you worked on eliminating that self-doubt. Now let's see if you're going to doubt your brother or your sister. Because that reveals not only that you have doubt for them, it reveals that you have doubt for yourself, and it reveals that you're forgetting that they're another you. Okay, so it's like Moses is being tested by God here, okay? Hashem is like, oh yeah? You believe that you're holy and high vibe? Well, let's see if you remember that you are the Israelites as well. They are one with you, and you have to expect that they have the potential to reach the same level. But he didn't. He worried for them. He doubted. And he was like, I don't know if they're going to believe, so I'm going to strike this rock instead. I'm going to disobey what God said. But God still gave them water. Even though he punished them and said, you can't now enter the land, he gave them water at least. He didn't let them die, but he didn't give them the full prize. You see what I'm saying? He's like, well, because at least Moses did it out of love, because he did it out of compassion, I'm going to let this slide. Because if Moses did it out of hate, like these people won't believe, let's just strike it. You know, if he had like that attitude, then maybe things would have been different. Maybe the people wouldn't have been given water and Hashem would have let them dry up, right? And be extinct right there. But at the core of his action, his expression was compassion. The whole reason he even went to the rock to strike was because they were thirsty. They were thirsty. They wanted to quench their thirst. It's a metaphor. They wanted to rise in consciousness. And he cared about them so much. And he's like, I want to rise together. I don't want to go at this alone. So I'm going to go. And I'm going to strike the rock for fear that they might not believe in the miracle. So even though he was doubting, it was like coming from this place of love and compassion. And that compassion is what brought the water in. So you can see how like there's still evolution happening, but we're still learning. There's still doubts. We're still learning how to cultivate that faith and trust in Hashem, that ultimate trust and faith. And as we move through the Torah, toward the end of the year again, we'll see how that faith grows and how, the people go through their journey and move closer to the promised land. So the promised land is basically just this symbol for the crown, right? Reaching the crown and high consciousness. And so this whole story of trying to reach the promised land is like the story of, the Kundalini rising up the spine or the Shekinah rising up the spine. It's a story of the journey of consciousness and the evolution of the psyche and the spirit. So at this point in the story, we're at a place where we're learning, we're in this together. We have to believe for and with each other. And we have to really feel each other. We have to be compassionate. We have to be able to feel each other's pain to fully experience it and go into it so that from there we can heal it. This is the story of Shabbat Chukat. If you want to hear more and you want some study materials, please join us in our private group. It's called Shabbat Crew, Shabbat Crew, Crew. And we share every week what the Torah story is, how it's relating to today, what the message is, how we can implement it and integrate it, and how we can actualize the light of Hashem in new ways through us to reach higher levels of consciousness as individuals and as a collective unit. So if you want in on this Kabbalah and this Jewish mysticism, join us in Shabbat Crew. I shared plenty of resources last night, and I'd love to hear your opinions and your interpretations of the stories, as there's always deeper to go. And what we share can always be added on. And in fact, every year I'm hoping, and this is the goal of Torah study, I'm hoping that we'll find ever new insights that we can extract from these stories. But we got to do it together. So I'll see you there in Shabbat crew. Shabbat Shalom. May you have a meaningful Shabbos, and may you really enjoy this special moment, the special time of the week where we get to prioritize what actually is truly important and significant. So enjoy time with your loved ones, y'all. Shabbat Shalom.